Think about this. Have you ever locked eyes with someone and, in that very instant, felt something you cannot explain? It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't simple affinity. It was something deeper, a feeling of recognition as if your souls had already known each other from before, always. Perhaps that person stayed in your life, or maybe they disappeared as quickly as they arrived. But there is something you know for sure. It wasn't just any encounter. Why do some people continue to linger in our minds, appearing in our dreams as if a part of their energy had never left? Is it just nostalgia? Or is there a bond that transcends the physical? The connections between destined souls do not obey human logic. They do not follow rules of time or distance. They cannot be forced and completely broken, and when they happen, they can change everything. But how can we know if an encounter is a sign of destiny or just a passing whim? What makes certain souls be connected beyond any earthly relationship? And more importantly, what prevents these connections from occurring at the right moment? Before continuing, if you feel that this topic resonates with you, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's delve into this mystery that science still cannot completely explain, but that many souls have already experienced. Imagine that time is not a straight line, but an eternal cycle, that everything we have lived and felt has already happened before, and that some souls search for each other again and again, reuniting in different eras, different lives, different realities. Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and felt that it wasn't the first time? A sensation of inexplicable familiarity, of immediate recognition, as if on a deeper level you already knew who they were. It isn't just a déjà vu or a game of the subconscious. It is an energetic imprint, the echo of a connection that transcends this existence. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, AI, field of energy that unites all human minds on a deep level. We are not separated. We are part of an invisible fabric that guides us with symbols and signs to where we should be. True connections are not coincidences. They are the result of forces operating beyond our comprehension. But here is the paradox. Not all souls destined to meet are meant to stay. Some come only to awaken us, to show us something we need to learn, and then disappear, leaving us with unanswered questions, intense emotions, an impossible void to ignore. Now think about that person who marked your life in an inexplicable way. Perhaps they were by your side for a few months, or maybe just for a few hours, but their impact was so deep that you still remember them clearly. Why that person and not another? Why do some relationships resonate on a completely different level? The answer lies in energy. Two souls that vibrate on the same frequency are inevitably drawn together. It is a law as powerful as gravity, but much less understood. It doesn't matter if they are at opposite ends of the world, or if years pass without seeing each other. When the connection is real, time and distance are irrelevant. But here is where the ego interferes. Our rational mind tries to control what it cannot understand. We try to hold on, prolong, force what perhaps was only meant to be a moment. And that is where suffering enters. We cling to the idea that true love means permanence, when in reality, the purest love is the one that sets us free. Jung said that what irritates or hurts us in others is a reflection of what we need to heal in ourselves. That is why some connections are calm and harmonious, while others are chaotic and stormy. Both have a purpose. But how do we distinguish between a passing lesson and an unbreakable bond? How do we know if a connection is a lesson or part of our destiny? The answers are not found in logic or conventional explanations. True connections operate on a deeper level, in a space where reason gives way to something that can only be felt. When two souls are destined, there is no doubt, no mind games, no internal struggle. There is certainty, a silent recognition as if, no matter how long they have been separated, the bond had never broken. But here is the truth that few accept. Destiny is not a guarantee. It is a possibility, a door that only opens when both souls are ready. It is not enough to want something to happen. It is not enough to desire a reunion. The energy of both must be in tune. Because if one is ready and the other is not, the universe will find a way to keep them apart. Think about all those stories of people who meet at the wrong moment, who love each other but cannot be together, who feel a connection that is impossible to ignore, yet circumstances drive them in opposite directions. Is it really life that gets in the way, or have they simply not reached the right frequency? Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the path to the wholeness of being. He said that true love is only possible when both people have worked on their own evolution, without projections, without dependencies, without unrealistic expectations. Until we reach that point, we remain trapped in patterns that distance us from what we truly want. How many times have you felt that someone had to be in your life, only to see the relationship crumble without explanation? Perhaps it wasn't the right time. Perhaps there was still a lesson to learn. Or maybe that connection was only meant to be a turning point, not the final destination. The biggest mistake is thinking that if someone leaves, then it was never real. That if love does not last forever, then it never existed. But what if some souls come only to prepare us for what is to come? What if every farewell is merely an adjustment on the path, a way of shaping us until we are ready to receive what truly belongs to us? If this is true, then an even deeper question arises. If some souls come to awaken us and then disappear, how do we know when it is time to let go and when it is time to wait? Here is where many get lost. We cling to the idea that love must be unbreakable, that if it is real, nothing should come between us. But the reality is far more complex. Energy does not flow linearly. It follows cycles, patterns, lessons, and when a connection truly marks us, the universe does not forget it. Jung said that every significant relationship is a reflection of our own internal process. If someone continues to appear in your life, in your thoughts, in your dreams, it is not a coincidence. It is a message. Something within you still resonates with that person. Something that needs to be understood before you can move on, or before the reunion finally occurs at the right moment. Here is the hardest truth to accept. A connection being real does not mean it will be easy. Destined love does not always come wrapped in harmony from the start. Sometimes two souls made for each other need to part before they can truly be together. Not because love is not enough, but because there are still parts of themselves that need healing. Think about all those stories of reunions that have occurred years or even decades later. People who met too soon, who went their separate ways, only to reunite when they were truly who they were meant to be. It is not that love disappeared in the meantime. It is that both needed to grow to sustain it. True love is not born out of the desire to possess, but out of the freedom to share. Two souls vibrating on the same frequency do not need to manipulate, control, or cling for fear of losing each other. They simply flow because they know that what is real never needs to be forced. But if this is true, then why are there relationships that, despite their intensity, never manage to consolidate? Why do some souls seem destined to meet, but not to remain together? Perhaps destiny has plans that we cannot yet see. If destiny truly brings certain souls together, why does it sometimes seem to separate them just when they are needed the most? Here is where our rational mind comes into conflict with a deeper truth. Not everything we desire is aligned with what we are truly ready to receive. We want certainties, guarantees, promises that if we find the right person, everything will immediately fall into place. But life does not work that way. Jung said that the greatest obstacle on the path of love is the ego, that part of us that seeks security, that fears change, and clings to the familiar. Often, when we find an authentic connection, we do not know how to sustain it. We project our fears onto the other person. We try to force the relationship into our own expectations, and when things do not turn out as we want, we call it a failure. But what if true love is not something that is forced, but something that is tuned? Two souls may be destined to meet, but if they have not reached the same frequency, the relationship becomes a constant clash. It is not that love does not exist. It is that there are still layers within the self that must be dismantled before the connection can blossom in its purest form. Think of all the times you felt that a relationship was meant to work, that everything pointed to destiny, but something invisible prevented it from consolidating. Was it an external barrier, or the reflection of something deeper within each of us? Jung spoke of the process of individuation, of getting to know ourselves before we can truly share with someone else. Many connections fail because we search in the other for what we have not yet found within ourselves. We want someone to complete us, when in reality, the truest love is not that which fills a void, but that which unites two beings who have already found themselves. Then the question is not whether destiny brings certain souls together, but whether both are ready to receive that encounter in its entirety. But if this is true, then an even more profound concern arises. If two souls are destined to meet but life separates them, how do we know if it is just a pause along the way or the definitive end of their story? Here is where the mind fills with doubts. We cling to signs, to memories, to coincidences that seem to indicate that something is still pending. A song playing at the exact moment, a dream in which that person appears out of nowhere, an inexplicable feeling that somewhere in the world a bond still exists that time has not been able to break. But is this a manifestation of destiny, or simply the mind clinging to what it does not want to let go? Jung spoke of the power of the collective unconscious, a space where the minds of people who have shared a bond remain connected, even when there is no physical contact. He said that emotional bonds do not disappear, they only change form, and when a connection is strong enough, it can manifest in unexpected ways. That is why there are people who never completely vanish. They remain present in small details, in fleeting thoughts, in moments of introspection, where their energy seems to touch ours, even when their lives have taken different paths. However, there is something that most ignore. Destiny is not based on passive waiting. It is not a story already written, but a field of possibilities in constant change. It is not enough to ask ourselves if a person will return. The real question is, have we evolved enough so that that reunion can occur in its highest version? The biggest mistake we make is living under the illusion that someone else holds the key to happiness. We think that without that person, our story remains incomplete. But Jung warned that true love can only exist between two beings who have reached wholeness within themselves. If we continue to long for love from a place of lack, from the fear of being alone, from the need for someone to fill the void that we have not learned to embrace within ourselves, we will never find it in its purest form. True connection only holds when both souls have reached sufficient maturity to not possess each other, but simply choose one another. But here comes the most difficult question of all. What happens when we feel that someone is our destiny, but life keeps separating us time and again? Is it a sign that we must surrender, or that it is not yet the right moment? We have been led to believe that if something is meant for us, it will arrive without resistance, that true love never drifts away, that if a relationship breaks, it was never meant to be. But what if destiny is not so linear? Jung said that what we deny within ourselves ends up manifesting in our reality. And many times when a relationship fails to consolidate, it is not because love does not exist, but because there are still inner obstacles preventing the connection from manifesting in its fullest expression. Unresolved fears, wounds that remain open, limiting beliefs that we do not even notice. That is why some souls cross paths, and even though they feel a deep bond, they cannot be together. It is not a lack of love, it is a lack of readiness. And when this happens, life does not destroy the connection, it only pauses it. But here is the trap in which many fall. They confuse a temporary separation with an excuse to wait indefinitely. They cling to the idea that destiny will do all the work, without realizing that destiny is not fixed, but a field of possibilities that is molded by every decision we make. Think about how many times you have felt that someone remains present in your life even if there is no contact. Dreams in which that person suddenly appears. Thoughts that arrive unannounced as if their energy were still intertwined with yours. It is not imagination. It is not coincidence. It is a manifestation that the bond continues to exist on a deeper level. But here is what few understand. If the reunion is truly meant to happen, it will not be because one of the two people waits passively. It will be because both have grown enough to meet in their best version. Jung said that love is only possible when two souls have reached individuation, the state in which each one has integrated their shadows and has stopped searching in the other for what they have not found within themselves. Until that happens, the universe will keep interrupting the connection. Then the question is not whether destiny will bring them together again. The real question is, are you evolving enough so that when that reunion happens this time, it can be sustained? But if this is true, then there is something even deeper we must understand. What happens with those souls that search for each other tirelessly but never manage to coincide in this life? Does that mean their story ends here, or that their connection transcends this existence? There are love stories that are never written on the paper of this life, but feel more real than any other. Connections that remain tattooed in memory, on the skin, in the soul, even if time and distance keep them apart. Carl Jung spoke of the concept of anima and animus, the representation of the soul in its deepest form within the unconscious. He said that throughout life we encounter mirrors of that energy, fragments of a connection greater than what our rational mind can understand. That is why some souls seem to search for each other relentlessly without ever coinciding. Not because their story does not exist, but because perhaps this life is not the chapter in which they are meant to unite. But here is where many people cling to a dangerous idea. They believe that if they have felt an unbreakable connection with someone, then they must wait for that person no matter how much time passes, that no one else will be able to fill the void left by an unfinished story, and that all they can do is hold on until destiny does its work. What they do not see is that destiny never rewards passive waiting. Destiny is not designed for you to remain stuck in an illusion. If a connection has been paused, it is because life has something else to teach you before you can sustain it. Perhaps in this existence it was not meant to consolidate, but what if its purpose was not union, but transformation? Sometimes the greatest lesson that a connection can leave us is to learn how to let go, not from resignation, but from trust. Because if a soul is truly intertwined with yours, nothing will be able to separate it on a deeper level. And if this life is not the stage where that story should flourish, then the energy of that bond will find another way to manifest. That is why there are loves that, although never concretized, continue resonating with the same intensity. Loves that remain suspended in time, that do not need contact to exist, that are not measured in years or meetings, because not all souls are destined for a happy ending in this existence. But that does not mean that their story has ended. However, there is something we can do in this life. Something that determines whether the love we feel is only an echo of the past, or a real possibility that can still manifest. If two souls search for each other but never manage to coincide, does it mean that their story remains unfinished, or that their connection goes beyond this life? Here is where the mystery deepens. There are people who enter our lives with an intensity impossible to ignore, who leave marks that neither time nor distance can erase. But no matter how much we try, however unbreakable the bond may seem, destiny keeps taking us on different paths. Is it a mistake of the universe? Or is it that some souls are not meant to meet in this life, but in another? Perhaps that is why certain connections are so intense, so difficult to let go of. They not only link us to another person, but to a part of ourselves that we are still discovering. And when that lesson has not been completed, life can separate those souls time and again, not as a punishment, but as preparation, because time is not a limit for love. True connections are not erased simply because life imposes distance. They remain in the fabric of our history, in memories that seem more vivid than the present, in sensations that return when we least expect them. And in the end, the only question that really matters is, are you growing enough so that when destiny knocks on your door again, this time you can open it? Think of someone who has marked your life in an inexplicable way. Someone who, even though time has passed, remains present in the deepest part of you. What if that connection never broke? What if, on some level, that person still feels the same? Sometimes we believe that love needs physical presence to exist, but Carl Jung said that true union happens in the unconscious, in a space where time and distance do not matter. That is why there are people who remain with us even when they are no longer here. Not because we hold on to them, but because perhaps they have another moment, another place, even another reality reserved for us. Here we enter a territory that the rational mind cannot fully explain. There are accounts of people who have felt inexplicable connections with someone they had just met, as if it were not a new encounter but a reunion, as if the story between them had already begun long before in a time and space that escape our conscious memory. Carl Jung believed that the human soul is not something isolated or finite. He spoke of reincarnation not as a mystical belief, but as a psychological possibility. The idea that certain emotional patterns, certain unfinished stories, can transcend a single life. And if this is true, then some connections are not only the beginning of something, but the continuation of something that has not yet been completed. Perhaps that is why some souls seem to meet too late or under impossible circumstances, because it is not the first time they try to come together, but perhaps they have been searching for the right moment across multiple existences. Think about those loves that arrive at the wrong time, those relationships that seem perfect, but that the whole world conspires to keep apart. Is it destiny saying no, or is it just a pause in a story that has not yet reached its climax? John said that what we do not resolve in our lives, we encounter again and again in different faces, in different experiences, until we learn the lesson. That is why some people seem to follow us throughout time, even in different circumstances, not because the universe is cruel, but because the soul seeks to complete itself through these connections. If this is true, then the love that is not realized in this life might be only a chapter of something greater, a bond waiting for its moment to fully blossom in another time, in another body, in another reality that we cannot yet imagine. But if some souls must wait beyond one life to be reunited, how do we know if in this existence there is still an opportunity? How do we distinguish between a love that is destined to return and one that was only a station along the way? Sometimes, separation is not the end, but a test. A pause in the path that does not destroy the connection, but strengthens it. Distance, time, even circumstances that seem impossible can be part of a larger process, an adjustment that life makes until both are in the same tune. Yet here is where the mind interferes. We cling to the idea that love must fit into our timeline, that if someone leaves it is because the story is over. However, the energy of a genuine connection is not broken by physical absence. It stays alive in thoughts, in memories that resurface unexpectedly, in an inexplicable feeling that something has not yet concluded. Carl Jung spoke of the archetypes of love and of the soul, saying that there are relationships that transcend the personal, that operate on a symbolic level within the collective unconscious. They are those connections that transform us, that force us to confront the deepest parts of our essence, those that awaken us to a reality greater than we ever believed possible. That is why certain souls never completely disappear. Their energy remains intertwined with ours, as if something within them also feels that there is still an unfinished chapter. It is no coincidence that some names continue to resonate, that certain memories do not lose their intensity over the years. But here arises the true question. How do we know if the bond is still alive because there is yet another reunion to come, or if it is merely the echo of something that has already fulfilled its purpose? The difference lies in how we feel when we think of that person. If the connection fills us with peace, if we feel a silent certainty that everything is happening in its perfect time, then there is no need to force anything. But if thinking of that person traps us in a cycle of waiting and despair, perhaps the lesson is not in the reunion, but in letting go. Because destined souls do not need to chase each other. They do not need to manipulate time or cling out of fear of loss. If their encounter is still written in destiny, life will bring them together at the exact moment without any need to force it. And when that happens, when both are ready, the connection will not have to fight against anything. It will simply be as if, no matter how much time has passed, they had never been separated. But if that is so, then there is still a deeper mystery to discover. If destiny always finds a way, how do we know when to wait and when to move on? This is the dilemma that confuses those who have felt a profound connection. It is about trusting the time, the signals that the universe sends, or accepting that even if the bond is real, the story has already fulfilled its purpose. The answer is not in the external world. It is in what that connection awakens within you. If a bond pushes you to grow, if it leads you to become a more complete version of yourself without depending on the other person to feel whole, then its energy remains alive. Not because you must cling to it, but because it has transformed you in a way that no other relationship has. Carl Jung said that what we love in others is what we recognize within ourselves, and what hurts us about a lost connection is not always about the person themselves, but about the version of ourselves that we were when they were with us. That is why some loves leave such deep imprints. They made us see what we were capable of feeling, what we could become. But here's the dilemma. When a love has been real, when it has awakened something that no other connection managed to touch, how do we move on without feeling that something irreplaceable has been lost? The answer is not in replacing. It is in integrating and understanding that nothing authentic is ever lost. Because every experience shapes us, transforms us, and leaves something that we carry with us even when the other person is no longer there. That is why when we ask ourselves if a connection will return, what we are really asking is if there is still something to learn from it, if there are still parts of us that resonate with that love, or if we have reached a point where what is most valuable is not the return of the other person, but the growth that we have achieved because of it. For some souls meet again and again throughout life, others in another existence, and others simply touch us, transform us, and then continue on their way, leaving us with the certainty that even if they did not stay, their presence was part of our destiny. And perhaps that is the most important thing to understand. True love is not measured in time, nor in permanence, nor in happy endings. It is measured in the impact it has on the way we change, in the ability to remember it with gratitude rather than with suffering. Because when a connection is real, it does not need to exist in the present to keep living deep in the soul. When a connection is real, it does not disappear with distance or with the passing of years. It remains, not as a burden, but as a whisper in the soul, as a melody that is never forgotten, not as an anchor that traps us in the past, but as an echo of what we were and of what that relationship awakened in us. Carl Jung said that love is a bridge to the deepest part of the unconscious. Through relationships, we discover parts of ourselves that would otherwise remain hidden. That is why there are people who come into our lives and touch us so deeply, as if their presence broke a veil and forced us to see ourselves with more clarity. Perhaps that is why there are connections that, even when they end, continue beating in some corner of our existence. Because they did not only bind us to the other person, but they connected us to a version of ourselves that we had never known before meeting them. And when that kind of love touches our lives, we are never the same again. But this does not mean that we must live waiting for its return. It does not mean that true love only exists if it is eternal. It means that we must honor what was, integrate it into our history, and allow it to transform us without clinging to what could have been. Because destiny does not only unite souls on the physical plane, it also intertwines them in memory, in the lessons, in the evolution that each one achieves from that encounter. And when we understand this, we stop living in nostalgia and begin to live in gratitude. Gratitude for having felt, for having learned, for having experienced a connection that, even if it did not last, was real in its moment. In the end, love is not just about who stays by our side, but about who helped us become the person we are today. If this message resonated with you, if you have ever felt the impact of an inexplicable connection, I want to know your opinion. Leave me a comment and tell me what you think. If you liked this content, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to continue exploring together the mysteries of the soul and consciousness. I'll see you in the next video.